She checks her phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Nothing. He hasn't responded to her message from 3 hours ago. The same man who could have had her last week when she was uncertain is now the only thing she can think about. Not because he's special, not because he's different, but because he did what 90% of men are too desperate to do. He pulled back. He became unavailable. He stopped chasing. And now she's the one losing sleep. You think women want attention. You think they want constant validation, endless messages, immediate responses. But watch what happens when they get it. Watch how quickly attraction dies when you give them everything they think they want. Watch how fast you go from potential lover to emotional tampon, from mystery to mapped territory, from prize to participant trophy. The truth that drives men crazy and women won't admit. Feminine desire isn't triggered by availability. It's triggered by uncertainty. Not knowing if she can have you, not knowing where she stands, not knowing if you're thinking about her while she's obsessing about you. That gap between wanting and having, that space where imagination runs wild, that's where attraction lives. And most men destroy it by closing the distance too fast. You text back immediately. You clear your schedule when she calls. You explain yourself when she pulls away. You chase when she creates distance. And with every desperate move, you're writing your own rejection letter. Because the man who's always available isn't valuable. The man who drops everything isn't worth dropping anything for. The man who can be had isn't worth having. Women are wired for the hunt. They just hunt differently than men. While men chase directly, women chase through resistance testing. They create obstacles to see if you'll crumble. They pull back to see if you'll lean forward. They cancel plans to see if you'll beg. And most men fail these tests spectacularly. They leap over the obstacles, desperate to prove their interest. They lean so far forward they fall on their faces. They beg like their life depends on one dinner date. But the men who pass, the ones who don't chase when she pulls back, who don't explain when she tests, who don't crumble when she creates obstacles, those men become puzzles she can't solve, challenges she can't conquer, mountains she needs to climb, and that need, that burning desire to win what isn't easily won, that's more powerful than any amount of flowers, compliments, or availability could ever be. The challenge isn't about playing games. It's about having a life valuable enough that you won't abandon it for potential pussy. It's about being centered enough that her emotional storms don't knock you off balance. It's about being complete enough that her approval doesn't define your worth. When you embody these qualities naturally, not as tactics, but as truth, you become the challenge every woman is unconsciously seeking. Think about what challenge represents in her mind. A man who's a challenge has options, he has standards, he has boundaries, he has other priorities. He's not sitting by his phone waiting for her text. He's not reorganizing his life around her schedule. He's not treating her like she's the only woman on earth before she's earned that position. And that selectivity, that discrimination, that willingness to walk away makes her want to be selected. She cancels your Friday night date Thursday afternoon. Some excuse about work, family, not feeling well doesn't matter. What matters is what you do next. And what most men do next is expose themselves as desperate. They text immediately asking when she's free. They call to make sure everything's okay. They send follow-up messages trying to reschedule. And with every attempt to salvage the situation, they're actually destroying it. Neediness broadcasts through everything. Through the speed of your response, through the length of your messages, through the tone of your questions, through your inability to give space. When she cancels and you immediately try to lock down another date, you're telling her you have nothing else going on. When you check in repeatedly, you're telling her you're already emotionally invested. When you overreact to normal dating turbulence, you're telling her you can't handle rejection. The needy man needs constant reassurance, needs to know where he stands, needs to define things immediately, needs to rush toward clarity because ambiguity feels like death. But ambiguity is where attraction grows. Uncertainty is where desire develops. Not knowing is what keeps her thinking about you at 2 a.m. The moment you need to know, the moment you demand certainty, the moment you require constant validation, you've announced that you're not the prize. You're the contestant begging to be chosen. Watch how neediness manifests. You double text when she doesn't respond fast enough. You analyze her social media for clues about her feelings. You ask friends what they think she meant. You create elaborate theories about why she's pulling away. You treat every interaction like it's make or break. You pursue clarity like it's oxygen and you're drowning. But clarity is the enemy of attraction. The more you need to know, the less she needs you. Trying to rush intimacy is neediness wearing a disguise. You want to have the talk after 3 dates. You want to be exclusive before you even know her last name. You want guarantees before you've demonstrated value. You're trying to lock her down not because you've evaluated her worth, but because you're terrified someone else will take her. That fear, that scarcity, that desperation to secure, it leaks through everything you do. Predictability is attraction's death sentence. When she knows exactly when you'll text, exactly what you'll say, exactly how you'll react, you become furniture. Comfortable, reliable, boring furniture. The kind you don't notice until it's gone. The kind you replace without mourning. The kind that serves a function but inspires no passion. Mystery isn't about being dishonest. It's about being selective with truth. She doesn't need to know you've been thinking about her all day. She doesn't need to know you cleared your schedule hoping she'd call. She doesn't need to know you turned down other plans just in case she became available. The moment she knows she has you completely, she stops wanting you desperately. Delayed responses create space for imagination. When you don't text back immediately, her mind starts working. What's he doing? Who's he with? Why isn't he as eager as other guys? That gap between her message and your response, that's where attraction multiplies. Not because you're playing games, but because you're demonstrating that your world doesn't revolve around your phone or her messages. Being slightly unpredictable keeps her engaged. Sometimes you're available, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you initiate, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're warm, sometimes you're distant. Not in a manipulative way, but in a human way. Because that's what people with full lives are like. They're not consistent vending machines dispensing attention on demand. They're complex beings with varying moods, priorities, and availability. The man who's too easy to read is too easy to leave. When she knows she can have you any time, the urgency disappears. When she knows you'll always be there, the fear of loss vanishes. When she knows exactly where she stands, the excitement dies. Mystery creates the emotional roller coaster that addiction requires. The highs of connection, the lows of distance, the uncertainty that keeps her invested. Dating multiple women isn't about being a player. It's about avoiding the scarcity mindset that makes you desperate. When she's your only option, every move she makes feels like life or death. Every text matters too much. Every date carries too much weight. Every rejection feels like the end of the world. But when you have options, everything changes. Abundance creates authentic confidence. You're not pretending you don't care. You actually don't care as much because your emotional eggs aren't all in one basket. You're not playing hard to get. You actually are harder to get because your time is divided. You're not faking disinterest. You're genuinely less interested because your attention is distributed. This isn't about lying or deception. It's about dating multiple people until exclusivity is explicitly established. It's about not putting all your emotional investment into someone who hasn't earned it. It's about maintaining options until someone proves they're worth giving up options for. And women can sense this. They can feel when you have options versus when you're pretending to have them. The man with abundance doesn't panic when she pulls away. He doesn't chase when she creates distance. He doesn't crumble when she tests, because he knows that if she walks, others won't. If she rejects him, others won't. If she plays games, others won't. This knowledge, this reality, changes everything about how he shows up, and how he shows up changes everything about how she responds. Women are attracted to men other women want. It's social proof embedded in evolutionary psychology. The man whom multiple women desire must have value. The man who has options must be worth choosing. The man who isn't desperate must have reason not to be. And that perceived value, that demonstrated worth, that proven desirability, makes her want to be the one who wins him. Your phone isn't your friend in early dating. It's a tool, and most men use it like a sledgehammer when they should use it like a scalpel. Every text, every call, every interaction either builds attraction or destroys it. And most men destroy it by treating communication like comfort food instead of strategic interaction. The phone is for setting dates, not having them. Lengthy text conversations kill mystery. Phone calls that last hours destroy anticipation. Sharing your life story through messages removes reasons to meet. The man who reveals everything through digital communication has nothing left to discover in person. He becomes a book she's already read, a movie she's already seen, a story with no surprises left. When she cancels plans, silence is more powerful than words. Don't ask why. Don't reschedule immediately. Don't check if everything's okay. Your silence says everything. It says you have other things to do. It says her presence isn't necessary for your happiness. It says you're confident enough to give space without needing explanation. And that silence will echo in her mind louder than any words you could send. Your responses should be confident, direct, and playful, not defensive explanations of your worth, not apologetic scrambling for approval, not passive-aggressive punishment for perceived slights. When you respond from a place of abundance and self-assurance, even rejection becomes irrelevant. No problem, hit me up when you're free carries more power than paragraphs of persuasion. The man who over-communicates is compensating for something. Usually for the fear that without constant contact she'll forget him. Without daily validation she'll lose interest. Without persistent presence she'll find someone else. But the opposite is true. The man who communicates sparingly but effectively stays on her mind. The man who says less means more. The man who isn't always available becomes more valuable. Women don't want to be chased. They want to be chosen. There's a profound difference. Chasing implies desperation, like you're running after something trying to escape. Choosing implies selection, like you've evaluated options and made a decision. One feels like pressure, the other feels like prize. The romance narrative women crave isn't constant pursuit, it's selective investment. It's the man who could have anyone choosing her specifically. It's the challenge of winning someone who isn't easily won. It's the victory of capturing attention that isn't freely given. The love story isn't, he was obsessed from day one. It's, he had options but chose me. Constant pursuit kills the narrative arc. Stories need tension, conflict, uncertainty. If the ending is obvious from the beginning, nobody stays engaged. If the hero gets the prize without struggle, it's not a story worth telling. When you remove all obstacles through excessive availability, you're writing a boring story she doesn't want to star in. The emotional excitement women seek comes from the push-pull dynamic. The moments of intense connection followed by space, the uncertainty that makes certainty meaningful, the distance that makes closeness valuable. When you're constantly present, constantly pursuing, constantly available, you flatline the emotional experience. You become background noise instead of symphony. Being busy isn't about playing games. It's about actually having priorities that matter. When she asks to see you and you're genuinely unavailable, something interesting happens. She realizes you're not sitting around waiting for her call. She understands that getting your time requires planning. She recognizes that being with you means competing with other valuable activities, and competition creates value. Your schedule should be a fortress with selective gates, not an open field anyone can wander through. When you're too accessible, you become a convenience, not a choice. Like a 24-hour store that's always there when needed, but never special enough to plan for. The man who requires planning, who has limited availability, who treats his time as valuable, becomes valuable by association. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're filters to determine who's worth letting in. When you maintain boundaries around your time, energy, and attention, you force her to invest effort to access them. An investment creates attachment. The more she works for your presence, the more she values it. The easier you are to access, the less you're worth accessing. The man with boundaries doesn't reorganize his life for potential romance. He integrates romance into an already full life. He doesn't cancel plans with friends for a maybe date. He doesn't skip the gym because she might text. He doesn't abandon his goals because she showed interest. His life continues whether she participates or not. And that independence, that completeness, that wholeness without her makes her want to be included. Staying centered when she creates chaos is the ultimate attraction trigger. Women test emotional stability through emotional instability. They create storms to see if you'll provide shelter or get swept away. They manufacture drama to see if you'll join the performance or remain in reality. And most men fail by matching their emotional state instead of maintaining their own. When she pulls away and you don't chase, you're demonstrating emotional mastery. When she creates drama and you remain calm, you're showing strength. When she tests boundaries and you maintain them, you're proving value. Your ability to remain centered regardless of her emotional weather patterns signals that you're the stable ground she can rely on when her world shakes. Emotional instability signals low value because it shows you're not in control of yourself. If you can't manage your own emotions, how can you handle hers? If you crumble under relationship pressure, how will you handle life pressure? If her actions dictate your reactions, who's really in control? The emotionally unstable man is a liability, not a leader. Confidence isn't loud or aggressive, it's quiet certainty. It's the ability to sit in discomfort without scrambling for resolution. It's being okay with her being upset without needing to fix it immediately. It's accepting rejection without taking it personally. It's maintaining your frame regardless of external pressure. This emotional consistency, this unshakable center, this refusal to be pulled into chaos, it's more attractive than any physical attribute or financial success. The man who remains calm during her storms becomes the port she returns to. The man who doesn't react to her tests passes them by default. The man who maintains emotional stability while she experiences emotional chaos becomes the anchor she needs. Not by trying to be these things, but by actually being them. By developing genuine emotional mastery that no amount of testing can shake. Here's what breaks most men's brains. The less you care, the more she does. Not pretending not to care while secretly obsessing. Actually caring less because your life is full enough that one person's opinion doesn't define your worth. This isn't about being cruel or indifferent. It's about being complete enough that rejection doesn't destroy you and acceptance doesn't complete you. The paradox deepens. The more available you are, the less available she becomes. The more you invest, the less she values. The more you chase, the faster she runs. The more you need her, the less she wants you. Because need isn't attractive. Want is attractive. Choice is attractive. Desire is attractive. But need? Need is repulsive. It signals that you're incomplete, that you're using her to fill a void, that you're not choosing her but requiring her. Women aren't addicted to assholes. They're addicted to men who don't need them. Men who want them, enjoy them, choose them, but don't need them. The asshole just happens to often be the guy who doesn't need anyone because he's too selfish to care. But you don't need to be an asshole to be non-needy. You just need to be complete. The challenge isn't about making her chase you. It's about being worth chasing. It's about building a life so valuable that access to it feels like privilege. It's about becoming so centered that her presence enhances but doesn't define your experience. It's about developing such internal validation that external validation becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Women aren't addicted to men who challenge their ego because they enjoy suffering. They're addicted because challenge signals value, because difficulty implies worth, because the easy path rarely leads anywhere worth going. The man who challenges her ego is the man who has standards, who has options, who has self-respect, who won't sacrifice his dignity for her approval. You've been programmed to believe that showing interest means showing weakness, that caring means collapsing, that love means losing yourself. But real strength is being able to care without needing, to want without requiring, to desire without depending. The challenge isn't about being distant, it's about being complete. Not needing her to fill your emptiness because you're already full. The men who naturally challenge women's egos aren't trying to. They're just living lives that matter more than any single romantic possibility. They have missions that matter more than sex, goals that matter more than approval, standards that matter more than companionship. They're not playing hard to get. They actually are hard to get because their life is already valuable, and entering it requires earning a place. This isn't about tricks or tactics or games. It's about becoming the kind of man whose absence is felt, whose presence is valued, whose attention is earned, whose time is precious, whose investment means something, because it's not given freely to anyone who shows interest. It's about becoming genuinely valuable rather than pretending to be. The addiction isn't to the challenge itself, it's to what the challenge represents. A man who won't be conquered easily won't leave easily. A man who has standards has value. A man who maintains boundaries maintains respect. A man who doesn't need her won't drain her. The challenge is just the symptom. The value is the disease. And value isn't performed, it's built. Stop trying to be challenging and start building a life that naturally creates challenge. Stop trying to seem busy and start actually being busy with things that matter. Stop pretending you have options and start creating actual options. Stop performing confidence and start building genuine self-assurance. Because women can smell the difference between performance and reality, and they're only addicted to the real thing. If this truth resonates, if these words expose patterns you've been blind to, share this with other men who need to hear it. Like this video if it revealed dynamics you've experienced but couldn't articulate. Subscribe for more unfiltered truth about attraction, relationships, and the psychology driving both. Because someone needs to say what everyone sees but nobody admits. The game is real, the patterns are consistent, and understanding them is the difference between confusion and clarity.